Hey everyone, welcome to the session on harnessing the new normal. My name is Abdul Chohan and I will be taking you some of my thoughts, ideas, and experiences of working in terms of setting up a remote learning and hybrid solution, both before the pandemic happened in the world and after the pandemic as well, having worked with a number of organizations in many different countries and getting things set up for this new world that we are living in at the moment. So let's have a look at this. The question arises, why are we looking at a hybrid model? And for me, the hybrid approach includes a number of different things. We now have technology and tools that allow us to do things that we just simply could not do before in a very simple and reliable way. And that's quite key. When technology becomes simple and reliable, it becomes usable. Whenever we've, in education, whenever we've tried to include technology or involve technology that isn't simple, that's not reliable, we've always failed. And we now live in an environment where, of course, technology has become simplified and is quite easy to do. The ability to use mobile devices to scan documents, to record screens, to be able to create video tutorials, for parents to get engaged with their own devices. All of these things can significantly change the way in which teaching and learning happens, both in school and when schools are in lockdown or in this kind of closed approach. And obviously, moving forward, we have to have systems in place that allow us to switch between the two at a moment's notice. And some of the kind of considerations behind this are things that I'm going to share with you over the next 15-20 minutes or so. So let's have a look at this. Typically speaking, we've had bricks and mortar buildings where we've kind of had students sat in rooms and we've been used to teaching them. And if you look at this slide on the far left hand side, you've got everything from traditional instruction where very little or no technology is being used to a more of a blended kind of approach, as we call it, where we've got technology rich kind of instruction happening as well, within the same organization, and everything between the two things, between traditional and technology rich. If we look at the online learning kind of environment, it's a little bit different. We have informal online learning, is self-paced. People are kind of, pop into that whenever they want to. It supplements what they might be doing in a school environment, in a bricks and mortar environment. But on the other hand, right at the other end, we have things like things that are full-time online learning, like the things that we see presented by organizations like the Open University in the UK, where all the learning is pretty much online and it's full-time online learning. And we're seeing a whole range of different things, from traditional bricks and mortar to online learning happening, and all the different aspects in between. Sometimes we refer to this as blended learning, but my kind of thinking now is that we're not just in a blended learning environment where we're in a fixed physical space and we're able to kind of then switch between technology and traditional learning. We now have to be ready for that whole remote element as well. And that for me kind of highlights this hybrid environment where teachers are able to switch between a remote learning environment, an online learning environment, or a bricks and mortar face-to-face environment. And the ability to do that and having the right tools that allow for that to happen is actually quite key. So what do we need to be able to build that environment? What are the key considerations that we need to have? A number of schools that went into lockdown, that were more on the traditional instruction side of things, had to really kind of think about the types of technology that they could use to enable the learning to continue. And for a lot of these organizations, their thinking was very much, hey, we used to do this in the classroom where the teacher was stood at the front and they were just giving instructions and speaking and talking and so on. we now want to be able to kind of mimic that, translate that using technology. And some schools have kind of taken that approach and have started to put that in place. Other schools have started to kind of look at how technology can continue to add value, how it can allow us to close the gap between what was happening in school and what's happening at home. In either case, one of the key considerations is the learning workflow. And what I mean by this is that it's the day-to-day operation and the day-to-day things that happens in school environments, in a classroom. So some of the things that we're kind of looking at is how are teachers going to share new subject content? And there's a whole bunch of ways in which that can happen. We can be using Pages, Keynote Numbers, if you're in an Apple environment, PowerPoint, Excel, and so on, within a Windows environment. And of course, we've got G Suite as well, and the plethora of tools that are there as well. However, we really have to think about that. Is this just going to be me sending documents over, or it's actually going to require screen recorded explanations? It might require whiteboarding tools to support that new learning and explanations, or an opportunity for the students to be able to just dial in and be able to have that conversations with their teacher as and when that's needed. The other thing to kind of consider is how are students going to submit their assignments back? How are teachers going to send their assignments to students? So this whole workflow, and this needs to be consistent and it needs to be very, very clear. The problem sometimes happens when we might have all the technology in the world, we might have all the software tools that we want as well. But if this thinking around workflow is not clear in the organization, if it is not understood by all stakeholders, whether that's the students, whether that's the teachers, leadership teams, it becomes very, very difficult to build consistency, and quite often can lead to frustration as well. Once students have completed their work and their kind of assignments, where do they submit that? How are the teachers receiving that? A lot of the schools I've been working with, and in my current role, I've been using kind of Shobi and Socrative, really powerful tools for assessment and feedback, and the ability to use voice and video to be able to give feedback to students as well. Also, beyond this is that, the key kind of the value that teachers have in education is being able to give feedback to students' work, course correcting, telling them where they've gone wrong, telling them how they can improve, directing them to new activities that will kind of give them a bigger challenge, differentiating work for different students with different needs, and so on. All of this feedback element, how is that going to happen in this environment where you might need to switch to remote or distance learning, at a split second's notice? That's a key consideration. How is that going to happen? And how is it possible to close the gap between a teacher that was able to give verbal feedback in the classroom to being able to give feedback of a high quality and potentially even verbal feedback when the children are not in the room? And there is technology and there are tools that are available that allow you to kind of do that in a very dedicated way, in a simple and reliable way, and a number of schools were already employing that even before lockdown happened as well. So for those kind of schools, one of the things that I've seen to be able to move and switch between this hybrid learning where something might happen at home and the students have got to learn from home, or whether they're doing that in school, was an easy kind of transition to make, because the ability to give that verbal feedback, the ability to kind of continue that relationship with students, was something that they could continue to have because of the types of tools and technology that they were using. What's also really important is, how do students respond to that feedback, and how do you know that that's happened? Because that allows us to kind of measure progress. It allows us to calculate whether students have kind of understood a concept or an idea, or have misunderstood a concept and an idea, and it requires clarification. So for me, again, that element needs to be kind of quite clearly explained, without which it becomes difficult. Just giving PowerPoint slides to students and asking them to digest that, or just giving them worksheets and asking them to complete that, is not really adding a valuable pathway to learning. Whether that's in a classroom environment, in fact, in a classroom environment, it's probably better. Teachers there can support, but in a remote learning environment, that quite often leads to frustration, because if that workflow isn't there, the students don't know what to ask, who to go to, where do I get the support from. That then becomes difficult, and quite often, it adds frustration. And we've seen a number of cases where this has led to parental frustrations as well. So the workflow in your organization has to be super clear, and this has to be something that has to be communicated to all stakeholders. Students should know how the workflow works in their school. So should the teachers, and so should the parents as well. And the workflow can be different. Different schools will use different tools and different ways of making things happen. I've been working with a number of schools to put digital verbal feedback in place, and of course in the UAE we've got a number of sample schools that have been kind of doing this, and it's embedded to the point where they even have policy in place where the frequency of digital verbal feedback, the quality of digital verbal feedback, and the quality assurance around that is also embedded as well. So learning workflow has to be in place. The other element is to kind of understand all the different tools that we have in our toolbox. So everything from being able to share and use whiteboard tools, having a virtual classroom, where I can speak to individual students or all the students or a group of students. That becomes really important. And when I'm saying speak, I mean actually being able to speak and record my voice and be able to and for them to be able to listen and respond in that way as well. That's very close to being in the classroom. I don't want to keep typing every little thing out. Occasionally I have to, and I can, and I do, but actually quite often a virtual classroom kind of environment becomes quite powerful. Assessments are also quite key. How do we know what the students have learned is correct? How can I assess and make sure that it's authentic in terms of the response that I'm getting back from students? Have they just Googled it because I'm not there to watch them? Have they just looked it up on their mobile phones? And there are a variety of online assessment tools that do this very, very well. Things like Socrative are quite powerful. They allow you to kind of mix up the order of the questions, so students can't ask another student, what did you put down for question one? You can do multiple choice questions, you can do true false, you can do open-ended questions, and so on as well. And it does all the self-marking and automated marking in there as well, and provides feedback. And there are a variety of online assessment tools that allow you to do that, and it's worthwhile exploring those. But again, having a consistent approach. How often is that happening? There's a school that I know that I've been speaking to one of the vice principals with, and they have a 10 question kind of scheduled online assessment at the end of each lesson, and it's really quick that the students kind of complete that, and it's self-marking, so it's not additional work for teachers, and actually automatic reports are even produced for each student, giving them feedback and telling them where they went wrong, what was right. And they're also able to do question level analysis, telling the teachers which students had put which question had answered which questions correctly and incorrectly as well, and that's kind of gives them the ability to extract data from there and course correct learning, go over misconceptions and so on as well. Anyway, there's all sorts of other things here as well, like assignment scheduling and discussion groups, and students being able to have peer-to-peer communication and being able to support one another. That's really quite important. There are times when remote learning has to be self-paced. Students are kind of working at their own pace and at their own level because they are working independently. They're not with one another. They're not in your class and all working at the same level at the same time. And that also kind of becomes important. There are other things here as well. This teacher-student voice thing for me, as I've explained, is really quite powerful. Certainly, even in a school environment, where you move this into a remote learning environment, it becomes just as valuable, if not more. and the fact that students and teachers can continue to have that relationship where they can speak to one another, discuss, remove frustrations, and course correct learning becomes actually quite powerful. It also becomes significantly powerful for parents when they can listen to the teacher's feedback. Being able to listen to the teacher's feedback adds significant value to what teachers are doing as well. Okay, there's also video. Now, video is, a huge area now, because you've got everything from, self-recording PowerPoints and keynote presentations with voiceovers, to screen recordings, to very simple, hey, I'm just going to write with a pen on a piece of paper and explain a math problem, and I've got my mobile phone camera pointing to my pen and recording my voice at the same time. So being able to do these kind of very simplified tutorial videos, there's a variety of different kinds of videos that add significant value. And I think that, if you have a workflow that doesn't include video and tutorials, that doesn't include teacher, student, and voice, you're actually missing out on a very effective part of technology that can provide a lot of support for students, and can actually allow students to kind of submit their learning in a variety of different ways as well. And certainly for the younger ones, kindergarten and so on, being able to record videos that parents can then use to support the younger children adds significant value to learning at home as well. So quite often, a lot of these things are kind of captured and described in kind of two different areas, synchronous and asynchronous. These are not absolute in terms of the lists that I've made here, but there can be a lot more. But that synchronicity with working with students and being there when they need you to be, and being able to give them that one-to-one support becomes pretty significant. A new update in Shobi recently has been around the ability to start a video chat as soon as a student requests, hey, I need help with this. Teacher can start a video chat, have a 5-minute conversation, clear a misconception, provide support, and it's switched off. It's not like you have to schedule a call, click on the link, get everybody to join in, and so on. It's kind of a much more synchronous and supports the learning conversation, rather than the learning conversation having to be squeezed into a video conferencing call. So there's a lot of new developments that are happening, and there's significant changes that are happening on the landscape of educational technology, and it's worthwhile understanding what your goal is, what is it that you're trying to achieve, and how is it that you're actually going to get there. There's also the asynchronous element, where you can have discussion groups where students can support one another without the teacher being there. Students can access videos, stop, listen, and try and understand and absorb, and then continue to watch that video as many times as they want, refer back to it as well when they need it. And I think that really kind of supports that shift from short-term memory to long-term memory. In the past, if you wanted to learn new material, you had to be in the classroom in front of the teacher at that moment in time, and you would get the full detailed explanation from the teacher. Things would be written on the board, you'd be seeing things on the screen, you would be making notes, there'd be a lot of things happening right there. Technology allows us to capture this and have it as something that can be revisited. It's almost like a time capsule. You've just captured that moment, and it's right there, and students can go back, listen to it as many times as they want, and in many cases, for many younger students, parents can watch this and support their children at home as well. So there are certain workflows that I feel almost have to be non-negotiables when you're setting up a distance learning, remote learning, hybrid kind of approach to education. And these non-negotiables for me really include the ability to have video tutorials, the teacher-student voice connection, and being able to just speak and ask students questions and for them to ask you questions, or for the teacher to authenticate the student's learning, being able to say to a student, please can you record your voice and explain this to me, and the student being able to kind of do that in a fluent manner means that probably they understand what it is that they're talking about, and things haven't been plagiarized or taken from the internet and so on. And also now, with the ad hoc video chat feature, you could have this kind of one-to-one conversation in a number of different tools as well. So let's kind of look at this recording thing in much more detail. We've kind of seen a variety of kind of recording tools and environments. Some of these I'm not going to kind of group video into one particular thing, but typically speaking, you do have Zoom type calls. This is an example from Shobi how their video call works with up to 50 people in there being able to talk to one another. You've got things like Zoom and Team and so on. So a lot of kind of technology kind of tools that are supporting the whole learning environment thing have kind of made this an accessible tool. And of course you've got all the variety of kind of different controls where you can stop, start, share your screens and so on. That adds significant value to the way in which teaching and learning happens. But what we find is the other aspect of video, which is screen recording. Now for me, there's kind of two tools that really kind of cover screen recording really, really well. The first one, and if your schools or your organization are using iPads, then screen recording is built in. And it's not automatically switched on. You've got to enable it, and these are the instructions. Feel free to take a screenshot. But these are the instructions that you follow to switch that on. And then you can do kind of some pretty simple things, right? Because you'd kind of start off on the recording element.
So I've got my screen recording feature on.
And I'm using my voice here. You can hear it.
Let's just have a look at multiplying by 11. So we take the number 25 and we're going to multiply this by 11. And you put the 5 here. And you put this 2 on the top left. Here. And then you add the 2 and the 5 together. 2 plus 5 equals 7. We'll put the 7 in the middle. And that is our answer.
Okay, so that's a quick tutorial that I did earlier on. Maybe I should have changed the font of my pen and so on, and maybe maths teachers will disagree with my methodology for multiplying by 11. But yeah, I mean, really simple to kind of just record voice over a screen that and I was just writing with the Apple Pencil. I could have had a PowerPoint on there. I could be using Microsoft PowerPoint, putting slides up and recording my voice over the top. I could have recorded a keynote presentation. I could be browsing a website, but the idea is that I've recorded my voice. Now this will automatically be turned into a video and be saved into my photo library. If you're not using iPad and you're using a different tool, using web browsers, laptops, PCs, MacBooks, then this is a great tool that you can use as well. So loom.com kind of specialize on the ability to kind of screen record or videos, screen record and create videos. And the nice thing about this is two things. Number one, if you click on the pricing thing, you'll find that the free version actually works for education. It just allows you to record the screen, and it's worthwhile kind of signing up for and having a look at. The other thing that's really nice about this is that once it's made the video, it shares a link with you, and you just share the URL link. So if you need to share the video, put it on your kind of learning journey somewhere, you're sharing it with students and so on, it's just a link and they just click on it, and it's not like a 100 meg video that you're uploading and so on. So it's a really nice way of kind of using this with different devices other than iPad. So that's something that's worthwhile looking at. The other area is that I'm going to kind of share about, and two more things. One is the power of voice. I've kind of talked about this pretty significantly. This is one school that I've been working with in the UAE. They've been using voice notes to kind of annotate over handwritten documents. So there's this kind of fear sometimes, hey, we're going to move into, technology. Does this mean that we won't be able, students will lose their skill in handwriting? And I think that question quite often came up on my travels with, across the world with schools who are using mobile technology and so on. And the answer is no. Depends on your workflow. Everything comes back to the workflow. In this school, students are still writing pen to paper, fantastic, but then the teachers are able to give verbal feedback and they're able to kind of talk with students, and the students are able to respond either verbally or in text format. So just have a look at this.
So this was my first attempt at feedback, and actually found it very satisfying, and the child that read it also found it really satisfying. So I'm just going to let you listen to it.
Malik, well done on using some of the Roman vocabulary and also for spelling it correctly. That's really great. I can see that you've really thought about this, and I really appreciate it. So thank you very much. Malik, you've got all the answers correct. The only thing I've noticed is you're not writing in full sentences. So for questions 4, 6 and 7, could you rewrite those questions in a text comment for me, just on the other side of the page, so that I can see what a full sentence would look like. If you're struggling with this, leave me a voice note and we can go through this in class. Thank you.
Actually, this worked out really well, and for this child who's one of my high-end members of the class, this has extended her already. Her feedback to me afterwards was that she really enjoyed this, and she felt that she'd made a difference already. So I think that is a real bonus.
So that was just a member of staff that used this for just a few days, weeks, just kind of getting a feel for how verbal feedback works, and obviously getting some positive feedback from students as well. And based on a few impact studies that I've carried out myself with a number of different schools and in different countries as well, the feedback that we get and we're hearing from teachers and from students is this is a much better preferred approach in terms of giving feedback to students, and the fact that they can hear what the teacher's saying and listen to as many times as they want, rather than the teachers having to write lots of comments. And when you listen to this, what we also notice is that the quality of feedback that the teacher's giving, the relationship, the intonations in the voice, these are all things that cannot really be captured when you've got a whole bunch of class of students that you've got to mark physically with a pen into their books. So this is certainly worthwhile looking at, and technology does allow us to kind of significantly change this whole feedback mechanism in a way that simply was not possible in the past. Okay, learning can still be exciting. There's one last aspect of screen recording we're going to look at. So augmented reality in the past, was kind of really quite exciting in some ways, but there was always this question, how are we going to use it? How is it actually going to make a difference, and so on. And based on that, I've done a couple of screen recordings that you might find useful. So things like Jigspace, I'm showing this on the iPad, but you can actually get this on other platforms and tools as well. It's a free application. It's got a variety of different tools in there and objects that kind of come to life when you fire it up, and it's absolutely free. You can get a whole bunch of these props and make them available. So if I take this one, for example, and I just put this, let me put this on the floor here in this scenario, then I can quite easily kind of bring that up, and I could move that around. And maybe I'm just going to use this aspect of this particular AR image, and I can kind of move around, and I'm screen recording. I could record my voice. I could be setting an activity. It does have other interactions as well, so you can open it up and kind of look inside and see what the earth is made of. But maybe I might not have wanted to do that, and I'm just setting an activity based on geography of different continents, or how much water there is on the planet compared to land, and so on. But there's a whole bunch of tools here that are absolutely worthwhile looking at. The other one that I'm also going to point you to, and again available on different platforms as well, is HoloGo. And HoloGo is a really interesting tool because again it's a library of objects. Some of the items are paid for, many of them are free, so it's definitely worthwhile getting. But you could, one thing that it's got is something called journeys. You can tap on it, it then kind of fires up. And what's nice about it is that, you know, it opens up this kind of little hole in your room, and then you actually walk through it, you know, and end up on the other side. So obviously this is going to lend huge potential to things like creative writing, you know, going on field trips when you're actually still in your homes and so on. And you can look around, you can kind of see objects, and you can get a sense of, you know, where you are, distances and all that kind of stuff. And you can take a good walk around the place and have a look at. And of course, then you can introduce a whole variety of different subjects, whether you're teaching primary or high school, you know, or whether you're looking at, you know, certain aspects of storytelling as well. If you want, you can kind of do a whole bunch of stuff here. What's also nice about this as well is that when you turn around 180 degrees from where you came in through the portal, you can still see that the portal is open and you can actually go back into your room. And if there were people there, you'd be able to wave at them, and you know, they'd be able to speak to you and all that kind of stuff and so on. So these things are always developing. There's one for the Colosseum, International Space Center. You could even put an elephant in your room. You could, you know, look at the inside of a cell, inside of a heart. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do here with these kinds of tools, and they're absolutely worthwhile exploring, building into the learning experiences. I know Jigspace has just announced that this is now available on a Mac. Obviously not being able to move around with a mobile device like with an iPad, but actually they've got controls on screen that you could go and look at and so on. And there's a whole bunch of other ones here that might be worthwhile looking at as well. Some for the younger ones like My Caterpillar, Wonderscope and so on. But then you've got other ones as well like the Insight Heart and AR Maker that you can use to do build environments and scenes and explore other augmented reality kind of tools as well. So absolutely worthwhile looking at, but obviously remember, you know, it's part of a learning experience, being able to record, adding value, teachers explaining what they want the students to do with this begins to add value and add meaning to using these resources effectively. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to say thank you very much for listening to me. My details are available here, so absolutely feel free to kind of get in touch with me either through Twitter or through email. I'd be more than happy to kind of share my thoughts as well. Thank you very much. Thanks. Bye-bye.